Taylor. I'm the sales executive at Murdoch Webster, and thanks for joining today's August Hear from an Expert. We love hosting these each month and hope that you find them informative. We focus on a new tech every month, and today we're talking with Paul Sir from Cisco Meraki, and also Joy Chua, which is really exciting, introducing Meld CX, which is a software platform that provides additional analytics over the Cisco Meraki fleet. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Paul. If you do have any questions today though, just come off mute, or if you're not comfortable shouting it out, just pop it in the chat and I'll ask it as we go through. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you, LT, and excuse me while I just swap, and so you should be able to see my presentation from there. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Sir. I'm the account executive for Meraki, based here in Melbourne. Lockdown Central, as we like to call it at the moment. It's a ever-changing scenario every day, unfortunately. So today we're going to take a look at the Meraki smart cameras and really around how they differ from what a traditional camera setup from an IT standpoint would look. Notice Adam's actually on the call from Damascus. Adam, I should have handed across to you to present this. Actually, it's you've got one hell of an instance of Meraki cameras out there. So
got a couple.
So good to have you here, and hopefully we can show you a bit of new stuff today as well.
Adam, feel free to heckle anytime throughout the presentation.
It's certainly a welcome heckling from everyone. So. Also, if you've got questions as we're going along, yell out, please. This isn't formal by any stretch, so feel free, yell out any questions as I move through the presentation. So a little bit around Meraki. I know a few of you have a little bit of experience with Meraki, but for those who don't, at our core and what motivates Meraki is the belief that simplifying powerful technology is going to free up people to focus on more important tasks in their daily role. And, knowing what we all have to go through of a daytime, taking a lot of the mundane and everyday run-of-the-mill tasks away from that and giving time back is really what we're about. Now, our goal is to, provide technology that just works. And simplify where possible, right? No product gets introduced into the Meraki range if it doesn't adhere to these core values that we strive to. And it's really around simplicity. And in a lot of presentations and time that you hear Meraki people talk, it's always around the simplicity. But along with that simplicity, it doesn't mean that we're sacrificing capability. And I think that's a really important part to note. And Meraki is really based on our dashboard. And for those of you who have seen it, I hope you love it. It's rare that we get feedback to say this is not world-class and industry leading, right? So it's really our one-stop for all our tech capabilities in the one dashboard. So whether it's client fingerprinting, a single pane of glass for your complete IT management, and I'll go through shortly exactly what that looks like, because it's a really broad platform and capability that we're operating from here. As real-time control and having remote tools, can really change up the way in which IT administrators, managers can run and affect a network. Being able to effectively run a school network, Adam, for instance, from home. If there's something alerting at school, you don't have to be there in front of the switch, to diagnose what's happening. One of the biggest differentiators is having that full layer 7 application visibility from most devices on the network, right? So for a lot of other vendors, that's an additional layer or an additional subscription or another third-party vendor that's required to get that application visibility. So we're really proud that that's just at the core of what our dashboard is about. Having client location, which will come out quite heavily in this session around MV as well. And then obviously the ability to search, across an entire network from the dashboard. So it really is a true single pane of glass that can manage all parts of your network, and it sets us apart from all other vendors. You know, having layer 7 visibility and control into things like your SD-WAN to VPN and secure gateways, from core switching through to edge switching, through security. You know, things like layer 7 firewalling, IPS, right through to MDM and being able to manage devices from the dashboard. And then, industry-leading assurance tools, which again, most companies would generally go to a third-party provider for assurance tools like we have out of the box as standard in Meraki. And, the dashboard's really set up to enable someone to work to alerts or automate so that you don't have to have administrators or managers sitting in front of the dashboard waiting for something to happen. They can be going about a daily task and being alerted when something happens or if something is needed, as opposed to being reactive and having to see it happen before an action takes place. Having the ability to open and provide APIs. So for integrations such as ServiceNow, to pre-do tickets when something is alerting, something that doesn't have to have an additional fault point of someone not hitting a button to set a process in motion to get a result. And the dashboard is really around that automation and enablement. And many of these features come by default in the dashboard. And as I mentioned, these are advanced capabilities that in most legacy, say, surveillance systems come at an additional cost. So with Meraki Full Stack, you've got the ability to deploy and rapidly and easily deploy very vast networks through a single pane of glass. Now, this has been never more prevalent than in the last 12 months when the ever-changing environment in which we're trying to operate requires some kind of ease. Being able to stand up networks where they haven't previously been, or move networks to somewhere where it's now required. The ease in which we can deploy. If I use the example where as soon as one of our Meraki cameras is shipped from our warehouse, you automatically get the keys for that, so you can have it pre-configured. So when it's plugged into the network, when the blue cable goes into it, it pulls down its config and it's operational, right? You don't need to be on site. You could have someone literally on site, plug a blue cable and it's operational. It's that kind of scenario that we're working towards constantly to make sure that ease and rapid deployment is again at the forefront of what we do. So the benefits of cloud-based. Now, I'm sure I don't have to tell the majority of you the benefits of being cloud-based. It's been honest for the last decade, pushing either applications or capability towards the cloud. But for us, it's around that simplicity, being able to access it anywhere, anytime. Right? For us, it's scalability as well, right? Being able to stand up huge enterprise networks at the touch of a button, having templates set up so that scalability is made possible. Reliability is something that we also really hang our heads on. So we have local data centers here in Sydney, and for many, that's really important. We have backup DCs in Singapore. In a lot of instances, we're not having to stream all of our data to those DCs. So our uptime, I think I've been within Meraki for over 3 years now, and I've never seen our dashboard go down. Right? And if your internet connection goes down, it doesn't mean that your network's gone down. And it's secure. So everything that we do, everything we touch, and everything that gets brought in terms of functionality into the Meraki dashboard or the platform is secure. There's no user traffic that traverses our cloud. It's full of HIPAA and PCI compliant for any payments. And we get daily penetration testing from a number of different sources to make sure that we're not on the front page, that we're not putting your company on the front page of any newspaper for any data or footage that, quite frankly, doesn't belong there. And it's future-proof. And I'll touch on that future-proof shortly as well. But you know, automation around firmware updates and consistency of what we're delivering makes sure that we are at the forefront of everything that you're doing in your business. And finally, they're the lowest total cost of ownership. And this will come out a lot as we speak about CCTV, you know, the traditional style CCTV versus what this looks like in a new scenario. So a little bit on the future proofing, and I think this is a really important part of Meraki. In this timeline that you see here, our solution gets smarter over time. You know, things that we deliver and features that we bring into the platform, we give you, right? These aren't additional licenses that are required. This isn't, you know, another layer on top of what you already have to be able to achieve these. This is the Meraki platform and the Meraki dashboard maturing over time as we either gain feedback or if we're actioning feature requests or as our platform learns what our customers are after, we create or we dev those features and we give them to you at no additional cost. So it's a really good example. Someone who bought one of our first cameras back in 2017 and now experiencing additional features like motion-based retention and NVSense API capability. You know, they now have those features over and above what they had back in 2017. And our feature velocity is not slowing down, right? You know, this would be a lot busier slide if I had every single feature on it that we've brought out in the last 3 years. And I think, you know, it'll be equally as long in the next 12 months, because I think what we've learned, what our customers have learned, what the industries around the world have learned, we are now deving to make sure is put back into our platform. So if we take a look at those scenarios now and have a look at what a traditional security camera deployment looks like. And I dare say that most of you have been there. You know, Adam, I know that you certainly had been on a scenario where there's been a traditional CCTV player, and it's the same for everyone. So it's based on a camera network, traditionally very traditional cameras where there's no onboard storage. You know, and they point back into a set of MVRs or servers, and then you need to be able to access those servers. Traditionally, what this looks like is it's coupled by people sitting in front of monitors waiting for something to happen. It's not exactly motion or, you know, event alert capable. And I think the greatest thing that jumps out of a scenario like this is complexity and cost. So the cost is almost increasing daily. For every piece of footage that comes down and is stored, you need storage for, and you need people looking at that. So, you know, traditional in this instance doesn't really work. I think the other thing that we've learned over time is it's coupled with a team of traditional security people. You know, people who are kind of used to doing, you know, a walk around a school at night time, putting tickets in a door to make sure that it's been monitored, to prove to the owner of the site that people have been watching. You know, in new style, it's just not required that way. So in Meraki Landscape, we look at what is an optimized edge architecture, where the scene being recorded is stored on the device itself. There's no need for external storage. And from there, you have the ability to view on the LAN what's happening on that device, or stream it via the cloud and have remote access. So cloud centralized control, management, config, where metadata and say thumbnails for motion indexing, for instance, where, you know, just metadata is put across the cloud, not full video streams. So in terms of, you know, making sure that your network is running at its capacity, you're not having to worry about streams of video footage, you know, taking up bandwidth. And we even still have the capability of, on the dashboard, creating video walls. So for those who do have on-site SOC or viewing requirements, video walls are capable. So the MV product philosophy is, again, it's around simplifying, right? We don't put features into the product. We're solving problems. And these are smart cameras that, based on the information that we get in through the cloud, they learn. And they over time, the more data that we get is more knowledge that we get to be able to create an output. Better understanding customer patterns by that data that is coming through. And then being able to provide context and trigger actions based on what is happening. Ultimately, we're talking about a security function, and a security function needs in itself to be secure. So all Meraki video is stored and encrypted at rest, so on the device itself. It's encrypted during transit, and then it's encrypted once again on the dashboard through viewing. And then there's an additional layer of security on top of that, which is the dashboard itself. So being able to administer rights and admin capabilities for users, which again is backed up via single sign-on, two-factor authentication and password complexities. All of that built in as standard to a security platform, which is the Meraki Dashboard. So taking a look at the Meraki family that's growing over time. And some of you might be interested in some of the newer cameras, which I can mention today. I won't be able to show you, but watch this space in the coming week or two where I hope to be able to tell you more about two others that are about to hit the range. So the Meraki MV family started with the 21 and the 71, one indoor, one outdoor. End-to-end encryption, all of the inbuilt capabilities around heat maps and person detection. This was really the foundation upon which we grew the MV family, which now has the 22, the 12, which is a much smaller footprint, and the newer outdoor variofocal, which is the MV72. And almost what we call the pride of our fleet. We're really proud of, and the capability in the MV32 is astounding. And the way in which this can work around retrospective point and zoom capability, VR capability is groundbreaking. And again, it won't be the last one in our 360 range that you see. I think one of the key parts here is no moving parts in a camera presents much lower risk in terms of anything going wrong. And we see that in our return rates, in our TAC cases to support cameras, it's significantly low. We have two new cameras in our fleet, which are the 22X and the 72X. Double the capability, double the storage, up to 90 days storage based on 24/7. So for anyone who, again, is knowledgeable about our camera range, depending on the way in which you configure your camera, we will give you a different amount of days of retention. So the beauty of something like a 22X and a 72X is that is significantly increased. Right? It supports higher quality video recording at 4 megapixel. And again, this will not replace the 72 and the 22. This is really in place for those who are potentially considering having to go down a path of cloud archive. And the cloud archive is a great option for those who, and we traditionally see this around people who have the requirement to store footage for out to 12 months. And typically it's going to be a tick box. Banks are a really good example here where, if an incident happened back in January, they have to be able to go back in time and retrieve that data. As opposed to someone who will view an incident from last week acknowledge the incident, export that incident, and just hold that incident. You know, other people have a larger requirement, and that's where Cloud Archive can come in. So in partnership with Azure, you know, the video is not only stored on the device itself, but it's stored in the cloud, and it's available for up to 90, 180 days, 24/7. You know, it's there. It is at additional cost, and you know, we tend to find that most people won't go down the path of this, again, unless it is an absolute requirement. One key part that sets us aside from most CCTV is the out-of-the-box capabilities around motion searching and storage just based on motion alone. So you know, this goes a long way to enhancing that onboard storage, not having to record every hour of every day when there's really nothing happening in that frame. You know, seeing motion, storing the motion, and then having really quick abilities to go back and view what that motion was, and if necessary, export it. Heat mapping. Now, I feel almost insignificant talking about things like this because we've got Joy coming on next, who is going to show you what the Meraki platform can really achieve when tapping into the API. But out of the box, motion heat maps are a really good example of movement in certain zones over a certain amount of time. And we find this being used extensively for our customers on the Meraki platform. And object detection, being able to detect where people are, where vehicles are over time, and really classifying those objects.
Sorry to interrupt, Mike, but I think going back to that previous slide, I think it's worth noting that with the motion heat maps in the search facility, traditionally you're searching every single camera in a traditional CCTV system individually. With the Meraki system, you can specify a time, a date, an area, and it'll search every single camera in your fleet, whether you've got one or whether you've got 300, and bring them up there. So I think that's one of the massive things that we like about it a lot as well. When we are even on our own cameras, when we're demoing it, I think that's a massive thing for it.
Chris, that's a really good point, and you've just given me another avenue where the ability to combine data across cameras is really powerful. And you've got to excuse the mower that's just coming past my window here. Recently,
the joys of live presentations.
Sorry, he's just gone away for a little bit. Recently, Meraki purchased another company, and that company is very specific to being able to tie camera data together. It was potentially a really large gap in our capability, and I think what you'll see, if I went back to that slide where the feature velocity over time, you're going to see in the coming months that a lot of that capability of being able to tie data from multiple cameras on a single network together is going to be substantially increased as we bring that capability in from the company that we bought. So again, watch this space. It's really exciting that we're going to be able to build that out a lot. People detection it's a really interesting space for us. And I'll let Joy talk to this as well, in that we don't do facial recognition. Now, again, what Joy will show is the capability of being able to do facial recognition. But for privacy reasons, we don't. We'll track people. And, that's anonymized person detection. So, as you see in that picture there, we'll throw a yellow box around it to acknowledge that there is a person there. If that person walks out of a screen and then walks back in, from a person counting perspective, it's going to count them twice. So there are ways in which, for specific requirements around people counting or anonymized person detection, that we can do it. And Joy's going to show us a really good example of how that is actually possible. And object detection is, it's something that's growing for us. And depending on what the use case is, outdoors in car parks, I think it's a given that we're going to pick up cars. Being able to pick up cars in zones where cars aren't supposed to be and alerting to it. Picking up instances where, in this instance, in education, if you've got staff members or students out on an oval where, they're supposed to be in class, having your camera network alert that there's a person here, the person shouldn't be there at that time. Anything after hours where people should not be in this specific zone, and having your camera network being able to proactively alert that is the case. Retail scenarios are huge at the moment. Everyone's with a lot of doubt around the future of retail and everything being sent online. The kind of data that a CCTV camera can give around traffic flows and direction and dwell times is important and will help businesses make decisions around the future of how they operate. For education around how classes and when classes and where do people have to be at certain times, and being able to give data back to support certain scenarios, again, really important. And then public safety is a given. At its core, these are CCTV cameras that can proactively alert where if a person of interest, for instance, is on in a certain zone, flag emergency services, or something else is happening in a specific zone to create a workflow that will automate around public safety.
How would it know if there was a person of interest if you're not doing facial recognition?
Excellent question, and I'm going to defer that to Joy when she comes on. I'm glad you asked that, because it is crazy clever the way in which they do it.
Yeah, that's one thing that we're really excited about at Murdoch Webster as well, and Adam, obviously, being in a school, there's a lot of privacy around student safety and not capturing faces of students, etc. like that. So what Meld CX is doing in that space is actually quite extraordinary. So we'll probably cover that off. Hold that thought. We'll cover that off shortly.
Absolutely, hold that thought. There's very clever stuff happening there. They can do facial recognition. They don't do it. We have other partners who outwardly say, we just do facial recognition. There are times and requirements where facial rec probably is allowed, required, and needed. So in those instances, it can be done. We don't do it out of the box. Meld don't really do it out of the box. I think there's probably a capability there where they could. Again, we choose not to. I think it's an evolving space that we're going to have to address in the coming years as facial rec and the conversation grows, and it will grow. A little bit around additional capabilities. So we now have the ability to plug in low voltage PoE adapters into the cameras and have them stream directly to wireless. So no blue cable. It's a really cool additional new feature that's just coming into the cameras now. NVSense. So not many people have gone down the path of NVSense, but additionally, effectively what NVSense is new ways for customers to interact and build on top of personal detection data that comes out of the camera, right? So it does this and allows developers to access 3 kinds of data. The first is historical aggregate. So how many people are within a given area at a specified time, and where exactly were they in the frame? The second one is a current snapshot. So how many people are in that area right now? And then thirdly, like a real-time feed. So a stream of the number of people in that location, pushed out at sub-second intervals, right? So this is really our combined data now be able to access by third party. And it's a simple licensing model. So for Meraki, you buy a camera, you buy a license. That's it. It doesn't get any more simple. 1, 3, 5 year licenses for it. 3 years on all, 3-year warranty on all models. Again, what you purchase now may not be the product you're getting and operating in 3 to 5 years time. It's substantially more. And then obviously the support from Meraki goes just without saying that it's class leading in that respect. What has now come out as well, and this is brand new to Meraki, we've been shipping these, I think, for the last 6 months, maybe eight to 9 months, is a new range of sensors. Now, these go hand in hand with cameras because they piggyback onto the camera or an AP. And so we have temperature sensors, water leak sensors, or open and closed sensors. So again, the IoT range of being able to monitor a network or monitor a space in which the network operates is now expanding. Again, the only reason why we put these into the Meraki platform is because they adhere to that simplicity and they take away the need for people to be monitoring spaces, right? These can now monitor spaces and proactively alert to incidents happening within certain zones. And these three have recently been joined by another sensor, which is like a cold sensor, so around the temperature, but for fridges. And the range is growing. So what we see now, again, we'll probably have another 3 or 4 in the coming 12 months. So a really exciting new range for Meraki to add into the platform. If anyone's already running Meraki APIs or cameras, feel free, yell out. I can send these in trial kits to you. Plug them in, try and see how they go. It is one of the fastest growing categories that we have in Meraki. And then lastly, before I hand off to Joy, the Meraki API services. This is really what gives developers, partners, customers the ability to take a Meraki platform, which is already enterprise ready, industry leading, to that next level. To be able to generate outcomes very specific to what the requirement is for them. And the lead into this and introducing Joy next is a really great example of taking the Meraki platform to that very next level. So with that, if there's no questions in the short term, let me hand over to Joy.
Well, I'll just jump in there and give you an example of the API. So we've just moved into a new office and we have got 4 car parks in the basement, of which people are going to be scrambling for when they come to the office, and we have a camera pointed into the basement. And what we're going to do with the APIs is we're going to have a system in place where someone coming to the office can send a chat message to a Teams group. Is there a car spot? And the APIs will kick in, they'll look at the vision of the camera and they'll figure out whether there's a space for a car in there based on zones. And then it'll send them back a message saying, yep, you can come and park, or nope, it's full. So that's just one of the simple things that we're trying to do with our APIs. So it just gives you an idea of what you can do. But I know that Joy is going to give us truckloads more than that, which is super cool.
Now, before you jump in, Joy, Cameron, you've got a question?
Yeah, I've got a couple if you don't mind. I'm going to have to finish right on 1:30 because I do have another meeting to go to, so I want to get in now whilst I can.
Go for it.
So you've answered the question about facial recognition. So I work in healthcare, specifically in aged care, and I've lost Paul because the question's directed to Paul.
I think he's yelling at the gardener.
Paul, there's
I can't hear anything, mate. Sorry.
Maybe he needs to know about the noise filtering.
Sorry about that. I just told him to get a. Sorry.
Paul, there's noise suppression. If you put it onto high, it knocks out almost everything. So go into settings in Teams. And go into device settings, the 3 dots at the top. Go into device settings where you choose your camera and your speaker and your microphone. And down the bottom it says noise suppression. If you set that to high instead of auto, it'll probably cut out most of your lawnmower, man. For us anyway, not for you.
Cameron, I love you. I've just learnt something too. That's awesome. Will it block out a screaming 12-year-old?
It does. It does. It's designed for that.
I thought that was a WebEx only feature, but there, I've learned something today.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks.
No, that's one free camera. You're welcome. Hashtag.
You're welcome.
Coming your way.
So we're interested in using cameras with facial recognition in aged care, so that we can actually use them to trigger a door when the camera detects a specific resident who's trying to leave, a wandering resident, we'll call it.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm interested in. We are, however, and I've got one right here on the desk, which we put into a resident's room. We can't hear it, Paul. Oh, you're on mute. That's really good suppression. So, Paul, one of the things is we've been putting these cameras into residents' rooms, and that's at the request of the families or the residents. However, that becomes part of a medical record.
Yep.
So, once we're finished, how do I download all the footage? Because at the moment, I can only download it in 30-minute blocks.
To export certain events.
I want to export all of it.
Okay. So that is possible. We've actually opened up that feature in the past couple of months. So even Joy might be able to explain how that happens, because they kind of do a similar. But what I can do, Cameron, is I can get my engineer Dave to talk through that with you, because that is absolutely a capability now.
Okay, because we logged a support request and they said, sorry, 30 minutes only at a time. And I can't do that. I can't download 30-minute.
Yeah, no, that's valid. I'll get Dave onto you for that one, Cameron. I'll get your details after this, and we'll have a chat.
Two more questions. I'm sorry to monopolise it. Number one, do you do number plate recognition?
Excellent question.
Do I have an excellent answer?
Yes.
yes, we do. Joy will show that.
We'll come to that shortly as well.
Right, the last question I've got is about the MV2 camera, which would be really good in aged care, particularly putting it into people's rooms. Because with these cameras, they can only really sit on a bench like that. Whereas the MV2 camera will sit up with a stand.
It will.
Do they store? Do they have storage?
No, they don't. They're a live stream camera.
So it's not going to work for us. Okay. I like the form factor, but it'd be nice if it had the.
It's an amazing form factor. Yeah, we're pumped by it, but it is kind of very single featured.
Yeah, not for me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel, you've got a question? Stay on cam, because the Meld stuff will cover off a few of your other questions as well.
Yeah, so mine was actually just adding to the API stuff. So not only do we export our Meraki API data into a data warehouse that we can do cross-referencing with all of our other analytical tools. But I can also attest to the API functionality, both on a personal level and a work level, in that, you know, we can pull, similar to what they're saying, we can actually, at home, we actually give our staff equipment to test and utilize at home, because if they're losing it at home, then they're learning how to use it at work. And we've set things up like my home AP is actually connected to Home Assistant, and I grab all of the API data to do recognition, and I don't even need a doorbell, kind of stuff like that, which is useful. So
all right, so we'll quickly hand over to Joy, because I really want Cam to hear some of this that you've got. So by way of introduction, Meld CX is a Melbourne-based company. It's really exciting to be supporting some Melbourne-based tech, which is really awesome, and joint with obviously Cisco Meraki. I just want to preface it by there's really nothing that these guys can't do. So part of why I've thrown this in at the end of today's Hear From an Expert is we all know and love Meraki, and most of you are using it in some way, shape or form. Obviously the camera's a really interesting topic, but it leads into that facial recognition and what is possible. So Joy's going to touch on maybe 2 or 3 different use cases, but I really want you all to start thinking about your own use cases with your own business, because at Murdoch Webster we've kind of got ideas on what healthcare needs or what education needs or councils need, that kind of thing, but we really need you guys to start opening your mind to going, holy shit, I didn't realise this was possible. And I'm just going to jump in quickly with Paul. I think you were saying you pulled into a large retailer, a petrol retailer recently, and went to fill up at the Bowser, and the guy called out over the phone system and said, pump 5, can you come in? And actually called Paul up saying that, you're in an unregistered car, I can't sell you petrol. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's pretty amazing as to how different APIs and different data sets can work together. So I'll hand over to you, Joy, on that one, but just, make a list of all your use cases because that's what we want to start talking about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you so much, Paul, as well. I really appreciate kind of the opportunity to present to everyone as well. I'm going to skip through some of my slides. I've heard a lot, and it's really exciting just to hear some of the use cases that have come up, especially from yourself, Cam. All the things that are useful for you. I've heard things about persons of interest in healthcare. I've heard about license plate recognition. And the awesome thing is those are use cases that we're actually deploying right now and are working with some really big names, both locally and also globally to do too. By way of introduction, my name is Joy. I look after partnerships here at Meld CX globally, and a little bit about Meld CX, like what Paul and Leanne mentioned, we are basically what we like to say, security and more together on top of the Cisco Meraki ecosystem. And what we're really passionate about as a company is, building kind of best of breed technologies using Edge and AI to deliver a lot of really cool use cases to our customers. So just a little bit of a, who's who in the zoo. We also partner with the likes of, Microsoft, Intel, and Google as well to bring about those technologies on top of Meraki and Murdoch. So today I really wanted to take you guys through basically our vision analytics product, which we call Viana. And what we like to say is really we're using our Viana platform as our business analytics platform. And that's where you see all the cool kind of analytics come through from all the Meraki feeds that we get. And Paul mentioned about how we've been using their API. So we do use the dashboard APIs from Meraki. And what we do is as we're, tracking or, working with the team to deliver the analytics that the business requires, we aggregate basically all the camera feeds as we track people as they walk around zones. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. I just wanted to bring that up.
Very unhappy guy looked like he was smiling.
Sorry?
Don't worry.
Sorry. So with what we do with Meraki as well, like Paul mentioned, Meraki is all about security and they're really, really secure. And that for us as a partner and a partner ecosystem, in the ecosystem, it gives us a lot of confidence to work with the Meraki team because they provide that security piece and we tap into their amazing APIs and as Paul said, their dashboard. Basically in the time that we've worked with them as well, I've heard so many good things about it, never going down, which is amazing for us. And we sit on top of that as an add-on module to provide additional analytics and AI capabilities to it. And so I'll talk a little bit more, but if you recall, before I spoke about how we were actually using the Meraki cameras and aggregating feeds across them. And that is to Paul's point before, if you recall his slide where he was basically using a yellow box, which we have here as well, a little yellow box to track people or even the presence of a person on the feed. But what we do as Meld is we've got basically our platform and we take that to another level where we're tracking that there's not only a person, but we're also tracking that person or that persona as they go about basically their business across the different zones. And this is an example of what it is. So we can track someone as they go from, I don't know, say using a JB Hi-Fi store, for example, I'll track someone as they go from, the Apple wearable section to the headphone section and then to the pause counter. And we do that in a variety of ways. And as Paul said, we do have the capability to do facial recognition, and I'll touch on some use case that we use elements of that for business analytics. But the key point to note as well is we also use a combination not only of facial recognition, but of other elements like behavior as well as object recognition to form a more comprehensive persona dataset. And so why I say persona is because every time we basically take the video feeds from the Meraki cameras, I'll have a video later that shows how that works. But all the faces that we take from the Meraki cameras are actually blurred on, our platform. So we actually don't get to see any identifying facial features, even if we are tracking things like age, gender, and sentiment. And then we also, as that person or persona is going about, their business in a store, for example, we also not only track that particular unique token, but we also match it to what that particular person is wearing for that day. So for example, if it's myself, I'm definitely wearing my Got Melt shirt. I've got glasses, short black hair, and we'll track that persona as they walk about the store, just to make sure, and Paul mentioned this as well, we're not actually tracking that same person twice and actually muddying up that persona data set.
So I'm going to jump in, Joy, just for a minute, because this was one of the things that I think is really, really cool, and especially with the question that came up about facial recognition, right? So the way it was explained to me was that on your face, you've got something like 1,500 unique identifiable features, right? So what Meld is doing is taking a snapshot of my face, if you like, and instantaneously creating an avatar, or what they call a persona. So I'm now a character of dots and dashes and whatever made up in the back end, but that's my persona, or my avatar, if you like. So as the Meld CX is tracking me through a store or through a school or through a hospital setting or what have you, you're not capturing my face, and my face is not being stored anywhere. It's the persona and the identifiable avatar that can connect to that particular person, if you know what I mean. So you'll see that as we go through. So when Joy's talking about a persona, that's the facial rec that's not actually storing facial data anywhere. Daniel, you've got a question?
Mine's a bit of an out there one. So for instance, tracking the persona through, they pick up a book from a shelf and they move somewhere else. Like tracking like that, is that things you're looking at?
So yes, in short, yes, and we're actually working with a large postal network at the moment, where we're even going a step further. Paul, you know who I'm talking about. But we're basically tracking as they take a parcel, they scan the parcel and they drop it off into a chute. So we're tracking, elements not only of a person walking through large kind of zones, but also more minute details of that behavior too is possible. And I've got actually a really, really good video, which I might pass.
Yeah, just jump to that, Joy.
Yeah, I was going to go through that straight away. So this is a bit of an example as well of what we could do. And this is, to your point, Dan, we're talking about kind of just picking up books and what we're tracking, but we also do, so there's two things that we do actually. I might preface that. So in our total kind of go-to-market, we've got two major ways that you can consume our AI out of the box, AI modules basically. One is out of the box, and things out of the box that we have include things like people counting, which Paul spoke about and Leanne as well elaborated on. And then we also have things like license plate recognition, Cam, that you were talking about. That's all available off the shelf, and we've deployed that in various kind of outdoor settings as well, like in a ski resort in New Zealand, somewhere very local to us. And that's examples of modules that we have kind of off the shelf that are available. And one thing that we also do, to your point, Dan, is really minute kind of custom training behaviors. And we do that, Paul talked a lot about privacy and all the security aspects. We do that by training using synthetic data. And this is an example of how we would train, where in incidents like that, where we're training for behavior and not necessarily, on any other elements. I'll talk about persons of interest in a little bit after. But in the instance, in Dan's example, where we're training for behavior, we actually, create kind of synthetic data sets using 3D rendering modules to get to a certain base layer before adding kind of more functionality or more training to flesh that out more with real life examples. So this is, I'm sorry, I think there might be, I don't know if there's okay, there's no There's no music, so apologies. I was just worried there was music and I couldn't talk. But this is an example where we've been working with some large supermarket chains, and we're actually tracking, as you can see, we're actually training for elements of theft. And as you can see, this particular gentleman wearing a gray sweatsuit, he's actually picking things off, from the beauty counter, and you can see he's looking over his shoulder, he's walking around, and he was just now putting things into his pocket. So apologies, guys. So this is an element of how we would kind of use synthetic data sets to train to a certain base layer. And with this, we're able to manipulate, I guess, the data in a more ethical sense, where we could change elements like, the color of the clothes he's wearing, manipulate the height of which he's stretching up to. So he can stretch up or down, and we can change the product sets. And that's how, at a really high level, we would basically train to simulate behavior so that we could track things like that. So we can, continuously train that movement, and that can form part of that algorithm as well for any custom use cases.
And the reason you do that synthetically was because if you actually waited to take the camera feeds from a Meraki camera in that particular shop, you'd be waiting for years to get enough data right to actually to make it useful. So the synthetic data training is actually to try and speed up and get the AI engine to a point where it's accurate and you can start taking those Meraki feeds.
Exactly. So we also have another video. Thank you so much, Leanne. We also have another video whereby we actually showcase, we're actually working with Australia Post on a couple of other projects. And one thing that we also do is Australia Post came up to us with a really strong problem statement about, training handwriting recognition for some of their self-service kiosks. And what we did was, Australia Post could only give us kind of 200 handwritten examples of how people have been writing addresses. We basically took that and we realized that we needed, at least 11 billion data sets to get to a certain accuracy point. And so we took that, synthesized that, and created our own kind of gaming and adversarial network kind of gaming engine, which was two kind of models and algorithms training and checking and balancing each other. So if any of you are interested, please reach out through Leanne. Happy to go through that in detail and show you the video as well, which I think is pretty cool. The other thing I wanted to touch on, I know some of you have to leave on the dot. Another thing I wanted to touch on was people counting. And so why I've kind of chosen people counting is because people counting to us in the AI world, I think is one of the most basic modules. Basic because a lot of it, informs what we need from a persona standpoint, which I think Leanne mentioned. It informs what we need from a persona standpoint, and we use that as a base to then add on more stacks of AI models in order to have, certain business insights and add on to certain problem statements that customers may have. And so for us, that's one thing we could do. And in persons of interest, we're actually using basically people counting as a base module, and then layering that on with synthetic data training of people's faces in order to flag certain things. So it could be, we're working with a large casino right now in Vegas together with Intel. And we're using basically people counting and layering on persons of interest as a custom module to work together with law enforcement agencies to pick up if, one, there have been incidents of, bad people forcing young girls to do things that they don't want to do, human trafficking, for example, and also using that to track, known persons of interest that have been lost in the system and usually surface in casinos under those circumstances again, so lost girls through that system as well. So that's something that we're training together with Intel Technologies for a large casino in Vegas at the moment. So
the interesting one, Joy, and the guys of you that are in the education system at the moment, it's an interesting one because we've been talking to a couple of schools around, thanks Cameron, thank you mate, about, roll call. We've all been to school. It's the most mundane task on the planet. You turn up to class at 9 a.m. and teacher calls out 20 names and tick your name off the list kind of thing. So there's some interesting thoughts around, because you're not keeping facial recognition of kids, that kind of bypasses or overcomes that requirement that schools have around keeping kids safe and the privacy of their face, etc. But it means that, you know, my little boy could rock up to school. You know, you see that he on the dashboard that he, you know, Hugo arrived at school at 8:54. You know, he's now in his classroom, and the teacher can pick up a dashboard and just look at it and see green ticks going, you know, the camera in the room has said everyone's here that should be here. So there's some really interesting, you know, facial recognition / people counting use cases in the education space, which I'd be interested to hear from you, Adam, and the guys as to, you know, what your thoughts are, because it's actually quite a hot topic at the moment.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Leanne. And also something else, I guess we've been working with some of the other schools, and we're working with a particular college in WA right now where they're using us for license plate recognition. And they have basically their own data set of, you know, the SQL database of all the registered vehicles, be it student, contractor, or parents in the school. So they're a large co-ed college. And they're using us to basically track two things. One, to see if there's any unauthorized vehicle that shouldn't be on campus. And then number two, they're also tracking the student car parks using an NV72X to make sure that no student cars actually leaving the campus when they shouldn't be. So those are two other problem statements from an LPR perspective for that particular vertical. So I thought I might flag that. I'm just going to play this video. I might make the volume a bit softer so I can talk over it. But basically through this video, there was a couple of things we wanted to highlight. So first was definitely to give everyone the assurance, like Leanne said, we're not tracking any faces. As faces come through the streams, they are all blurred, so we don't actually capture any identifiable characteristics. The second as well is to show you guys how easy it is to basically just load a camera and Meraki camera onto the dashboard, and an example of how the dashboard would look like, as you can see, for people counting as well. So it's quite an easy process, and we've got our team on hand as well to do any warm handovers that you might like. Using these people counting module as an example, you can see that, you know, it's really easy to set up kind of tripwires as well, which means that we can count people as they come through, you know, entrances. As you can see, that's how you would do it. And another thing as well is we're able to track, as I mentioned before, object recognition, where if someone's wearing a lanyard or a staff badge, we'll be able to pick that up and exclude them out of the data set for what is student too. So this is a little snippet into how our dashboard looks like behind the scenes. Yep. So
what was interesting on that, Joy, as well, is that I don't know if people noticed it, so we can share this link following the call today, but it had happy smiley faces, little yellow emojis popping up. So again, it's, you know, maybe healthcare or in education, you can see if someone's happy, sad, angry, you know, you can kind of get a vibe as to what they're feeling, you know, at that particular moment. And I know with a lot of schools that we're speaking with, you know, teachers are often, you know, really trying to seek feedback from the students as what did they think of that class? Was that, you know, 5 out of 5? Was that awesome? Or was it 1 boring as hell? And, you know, the teacher's really trying to seek that feedback as well. So even
around, there's a really good module around content effectiveness where it can track eyes and, you know, are people dwelling on a certain piece of content for 10 seconds? Are they there for 40 seconds? Or are they there for a minute and a half, which means the content is 100%, successful, for instance. So it's a really clever module around dwell times and effectiveness.
Yeah, and to give people more assurance as well, that's actually a case study that we've got working with some of the big 4 banks as well. So the particular use case that Paul was talking about, content effectiveness, is us working with some of the big 4 banks to track people's uptake of some of their digital content within branches and producing reports for that. So that's some other use case that we've rolled out too.
Yeah, that's really good for retail as well, obviously, that whole dwell, you know, where people are walking, and also the security, if you've got someone hanging around change rooms and all that sort of thing, you know, the opportunities are endless. I can't actually, you know, fathom, you know, the number of use cases that your technology can support, Joy. It's really, really exciting. So Does anyone have any questions at this point in time? I know that was probably quite a bit to take in. No, because we're right on 1:30. Was there anything else, Joy, you wanted to cover off before we leave, or?
I'm good for now. I think if anyone needs any other collateral after, I'll work with you, Leanne, to just get any of the links out to the teams.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, guys. Well, if there's no more questions, we're right on time. I really appreciate your hour with us today. I hope you found it informative and exciting, and we'll look forward to touching base in the next couple of days to get some feedback from you. But as always, we're here to support you, and yeah, happy to help anytime. So hopefully we'll see you at the next, hear from an expert next month. See you soon.
Thank you.